unwavering support of the Russian pro-democracy forces, which will be carrying on Alexei Navalny's legacy and his dream of a future normal, peaceful, democratic Russia, which lives at peace with the world and does not attack anybody and is focused on prosperity and securing rights of their own citizens. It's difficult for me to speak, much as the same as my colleagues, because I knew Alexei for almost 16 years and I can't help recalling all these personal moments. Alexei was a remarkably normal person. He never had this snobby VIP touch of a popular politician. Last time when we did a walk with him, it was July 2020, just after the lockdown was lifted, and I think 3 weeks before he was poisoned by Putin. We did a walk in the streets of Moscow, and unbelievably we were interrupted like every couple of seconds by ordinary people who approached him and wanted to talk to him, to make a selfie, to shake his hand, and he never shrugged that off. His habit was always, he talked to his colleagues and said, listen, you got to wait. We'll discuss politics later. I want to talk to people. His vision of a normal future for Russia, freedom and peace, was resonating with millions and millions of ordinary Russians. You see how many people are laying flowers across the country despite being arrested for doing so. Just continuing what Evgenia said about the repressive nature of Putin's regime. On a more serious note, recently ahead of the presidential elections, the polling company Russian Field had published a poll when they asked people an open question, naming no specific names, but asking them, ideally, if you wanted to vote for any person you choose, who would you vote for? And Vladimir Putin only got 29% in that poll. I mentioned this in one of our latest hearings right here. Alexei Navalny was second, way above all the prime ministers, ministers of the Russian government. Many of you are asking the question, why did Putin try to kill him? This is why. Because his vision of a normal, peaceful and democratic Russia of the future was successfully competing with Putin's rule by intimidation and fear. And I had many discussions here in Europe about how and why this murder has happened. I mean, you just need to reconstruct the events that took place in the past few months. Since September, Putin has been trying to severely cut off communications and exchange of written letters with Navalny. Later in the autumn, he had arrested or forced into exile all his longtime attorneys and replaced them with temporary ones. In December, he was transported to an isolated, one of the most isolated penal colonies in Russia with absolutely no outside access and strict isolation of prisoners. Nobody knew what was happening inside these notorious walls. So this really, if you look back in retrospect, that really looks like a thorough preparation for a premeditated, cold-blooded murder. That's what it was. And it's definitely no accident that this murder happened on the day of the opening of the Munich Security Conference, when the political and security leaders from across the free world come to discuss strategy, how to move forward. That was the message. When I talk to many European politicians, and we continue to call for a strong statement from European Union about illegitimacy of Putin's next presidential term, I hear people saying, but we still have to talk to him. How do we talk if we call him illegitimate? Well, he's talking to you. He's talking to you. He's sending you a very clear message. I can do this. I can kill people at will. I can attack countries at will. I can do whatever I want. Which means that inaction matters. I repeat that yet again. Inaction matters. Any inaction on retaliating to a brutal, blatant murder of Alexei Navalny and any inaction to Putin's continuing aggression against Ukraine will be taken by Putin as a sign of weakness. That's his language that he understands. So action is necessary. And first, I would remind you of the one issue where European Union's actions have been certainly lagging behind because EU has introduced sweeping economic sanctions against Putin, which do cause a lot of harm to Putin's economy. That's another topic, we will come back to it. But only less than 2,000 individuals from Russia are currently on EU sanctions lists. Less than 2,000. It's nothing. Because I used to work for the Russian government for 6 years, and I know many of those people who are still out there. They think that sanctions are only about those bosses on top. We who work in the second or third tier of the government can continue being involved and complicit in Putin's crimes. Nothing will happen to us. This was exactly the aim of the list of 6,000 people complicit in Putin's corruption and crimes and aggression that was proposed by Alexei Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation. You see, 6,000 is a little bit bigger than 2,000. So I think it's a good time to act. And all these people, we have strong evidence packs how complicit they are in what Putin is doing. They need to be sent a strong signal that responsibility will come. And that's the legacy of Alexei Navalny, and we believe it should be respected. And also, it is no coincidence that Navalny's last political call from prison before he was murdered was for the Russians to participate in the action called Noon Against Putin, together at the polling stations on the 17th of March, exactly at noon, to show how many people are out there against Putin and the war. Putin is really afraid of that, because this will produce the major news of the day. Not the 85% result that will be drawn up, but this. And I think this prompted Putin to actually push this red button and give the order to murder Alexei. That was his last political will for Russians to demonstrate their disobedience with Putin's regime and the war. You will see it on the 17th of March, and I think it will be only appropriate on the side of the free world to respond to these developments with not recognizing Putin as a legitimate Russian ruler for another presidential term. Thank you.